Marijuana has been prohibited in Canada since 1923, but after it became popular in the 1960s, there was public pressure to permit possession. In 1969, Pierre Trudeau appointed a royal commission, which eventually recommended cannabis use be decriminalized.
Reduced emphasis on the use of the criminal law.
Well, that's why governments appoint royal commissions of inquiry, because people like Chris, they can't raise money like that.
Right.
And the government did appoint a royal commission of inquiry, but they didn't like the conclusion it reached.
The Ledain Commission, I think, for the first time, and probably worldwide, was one of the first modern scientific reviews, and it debunked the mythology.
Thousands of youngsters are being criminalized for nothing. Okay, we said that. Then we went into the cannabis thing, and already the political climate was that the Liberals were going into election, and they were not sure at all that they would win these elections. By the time we tabled the final report, the House of Commons was in disarray, and not one question. We were thanked for our good services and sent to etc., etc. So here went 4 years of extreme solid work, according to international opinion, the most solid work that was done in the field. 4 years, 4 books.
And afterwards also several times asked by journalists, what did I think about it? And all I could say is, well, there's just nothing you can do. Politics rule everything, and politics, unfortunately, are not based on intellect. So.
Does anybody know that gentleman's name?
David Malmo-Levine! My name is David Malmo-Levine!
So you move a little too fast, you're breathing in a dope tree. Maybe get your head a bit bent and shake it in a dope tree. So you go a little too fast, you're floating in a dope tree. Maybe get your head a bit bent, keep on moving through your dope tree.
You're watching High Society with your host, David Malmo-Levine.
Hello and welcome to another edition of High Society. My name is David Malmo-Levine, and with us we have Kirk Toussaint.
Thank you.
Toussaint.
Either one?
Okay, it's Kirk Toussaint. Actually, it's Kirk Toussaint, and he's with the BCCLA, the British Columbia Civil Liberties Association, which has been fighting prohibition since when?
69 at least.
69, since they testified in front of the original Ledain Commission.
The report says no one should be thrown into prison for simply using or being in possession of psychotropic drugs. Nonetheless, the Commission says possession of such drugs should be removed as an offense from the Narcotic Control Act and placed under the Food and Drugs Act as an offense punishable by a fine not exceeding a reasonable amount. The Commission suggests a maximum of $100.
Both of you say that if it were legal, you'd at least try it, and you're not ruling out the possibility of becoming a smoker.
Right.
Would you like to see the penalties change still further? Do you think this current change now goes far enough?
The minimum that can be applied now if a man's a possessor is a suspended sentence. He cannot be fined. And the reason he can't be fined is that the maximum is 7 years, and under the provisions, the general provisions of the Criminal Code, if the maximum of any offense is over 5 years, you can't substitute a fine for imprisonment. So you have to give him imprisonment or a suspended sentence. Under the new legislation, they'll be able to fine them. And in some cases, that's where the problem lies. Daddy gave the kid too much money in the first place, and Daddy's going to pay the fine.
But you still think it requires some penalty?
Yeah, because I don't agree that it should be made legal, because I'm afraid of the country.
And Kirk has been at Ottawa testifying in front of the Bill C-38 committee deal thing there. And basically, what's happening? What's the latest on that?
Well, the latest news that we heard this morning, and thanks to the posters on the CannabisCulture.com forums for this, Mark Emery and Guardian 99, is that the bill was gone over clause by clause. That means line by line by the committee, last night, and they in fact added some amendments. There's not going to be mandatory minimums, which is great news. And there is going to be a personal cultivation exception. So people are going to be able to grow for themselves, apparently, between 0 and 3 plants, and the maximum penalty will be a ticket for $500 if you're an adult and $250 if you happen to not be an adult.
Yeah, we'll get into the details of this here for a second because it's kind of big news here, and you're hearing it on Pot TV first. But 3 plants, that means anybody in the household can grow 3 plants, and then say if there's 4 people in the household, including little kids, that you can have 12 plants. Is that the deal?
Yeah, it's. I haven't seen the language of the amendments, David, and so it's not real clear whether you can combine. Now, the reports on the forums are from people that were there and have been there throughout, are that you can combine those numbers of plants together. I suspect only for minors that are probably above 14 or 16.
Something like
I
that.
don't think your 3-year-old's going to get 3 plants of his or her
It'd
own.
be interesting to see what age they allow it, and also what's the deal with it's still going to be fines, right? And it's going to be $250 if you're under 18 for fines.
That's the understanding. For growing up to 3 plants.
Up to 3 plants, and then $500 fines if you're an adult.
500.
No limit on the size of the plants.
So we've heard.
Les infractions relatives au cannabis.
The closest that came to happening was in the speech from the throne in 1980. That same year, Ronald Reagan was elected U.S. president, and the war on drugs was soon launched.
Drugs rip right through the moral fiber of our countries.
Decriminalization was off the political agenda in Canada.
The problem here seems to be that there is a continued need to punish somehow. That the concept of not punishing people really wasn't. Well, it was brought up by you guys, you and Paul Burstein, and the other fellow at the Canadian Criminal Lawyers Association.
That's right.
But they weren't interested in hearing the no punishment message at all, I guess.
Well, I'm not sure that they weren't interested in hearing it. I think that they might have thought it wasn't the right forum to raise it in. I disagreed. I thought that we should make a principled argument that, while Bill C-38, and we talk about decriminalization, might be a good step, what we really should be talking about is legalization. And really what we should be talking about is, from a position of legalization, we should be listening to the prohibitionists to try to make the case that it ought to be criminal. Because that's never been done, and I'm frankly quite sure that they couldn't do it.
Okay, that's good.
This bill does not remove the possession of marijuana from the criminal code. Right. So practical point 1, this bill should remove entirely the prohibition of possession of marijuana from the criminal code. In provinces that are not party to the Contraventions Act, such as British Columbia, this bill does not decriminalize in any way, shape, or form the possession of marijuana. So the bill ought to say possession of under 30 grams, or whatever the number is, of marijuana is not a crime. It is being removed entirely from the criminal code. Then you need to craft a piece of legislation that is, I suppose, akin to the Contraventions Act that governs the system. The bill needs to say very clearly that if you're ticketed for the possession of marijuana, that is not captured in the CPIC database or the PERS database for that matter, because there's another RCMP database out there that we haven't even talked about. And so those are 2 practical suggestions to deal with the one problem you've raised. The other problem, of course, that you talked about was cultivation. And I have to put my principled hat back on right now, because raising the penalties for cultivating marijuana is not going to stop grow ops from happening. Period. I cannot believe that there's anyone sitting in this room that actually believes that if we increase the enforcement or the penalty for cultivating marijuana, people are going to stop growing marijuana. That is ludicrous. It's belied by the experience across the world. The only way you're going to protect your neighborhood from dangerous grow operations is to engage in true reform, which is the legalization of the industry. It is not to punish harder. That doesn't work. It's never worked in Canada. It doesn't work in the United States. It doesn't work in countries where they kill you for growing marijuana. People still grow marijuana. So if you want to protect your neighborhoods, I think what what this committee needs to do and what Parliament needs to do in general is show some true leadership on this issue and go ahead and suggest some real reform.